I remember when I was 5 years old, I made my first ever portrait. It was the portrait of a girl who was wearing a rainbow colored top. I even drew a rainbow in the background. I still remember that drawing quite clearly. It's funny to reminisce of that moment now, as there wasn't anything special about that drawing. If I were to scrutinize it from an adult's perspective, it was like any other typical drawing made by a 5-year-old kid. Wiggly lines, disproportionate body, and color spilling out of the lines. But it was never meant to be analyzed by an adult. Adults, with their pragmatic sense of skepticism and cynical sense of intelligence, could never understand how the world seemed to me at that age. How there was a spark in the eye that noticed even the most trivial of things and thought of them to be mighty. Now, of course, that I'm older, I realize it was simply a scribble made by a toddler, and there wasn't anything exceptional about that portrait, if I judged it critically. But the thing was, at that tender age, I didn't understand the technicalities of art or color theory, geometry, or perspective. I wanted to say so much at that age, but I didn't, because I didn't know how. Maybe part of the reason was the limited vocabulary that one has when one is a child, or maybe that wasn't the case at all. Because I've lived for 22 years now, and I believe I have quite the spectrum of vocabulary, but still, to this day, I can never speak. I feel like nothing has changed, and I'm still a confused kid trying to wrap my head around the things that go on around me, desperately trying to make sense of this world. Words are always in my head. There are so many things that run across my mind, but I always seem to choke on those words, and they never roll off my tongue. Is it better to speak or to die? For me, to die. It's easier to die because I could never speak. I never learned how to speak. I'm not good with words. I never have been. Nothing has changed, as I still feel like art is the only way I can speak. It is the only thing I know and the only thing that makes sense to me. I barely know myself without art. I don't even know about my existence without the existence of art. I feel like my true self only when I'm creating art. Even when I was a kid, I always believed in this blind sense of absurdly optimistic pursuit for passion. I didn't quite understand what it meant to have a noble or a safe career path. Pursuing something like medicine was never in the cards for me. No doubt, I absolutely agree that being able to study medicine is an absolute and true privilege. But it's not something that I dreamt of or yearned for during my formative years. I would sit on the floor with paint spilled all over the rugs and carpets and splatters of it on my skin and skirt, feeling no less than Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. I would burrow myself in books and read avidly till my eyes started burning, and I would write manically. My index finger always stained blue from ink. The keys of my keyboard always loose from the endless and furious clicking to finish a manuscript on a whim. I always thought maybe I'd write the next bestseller over the course of my summer holidays. Maybe I'd create the greatest manga of all times. I'd keep sketching till the graphite gave out and the charcoal was all lost, and all that was left was just dark soot and ash. My father is very fascinated by photography, so he'd always buy the most sophisticated cameras and lenses. Though neither one of us could truly grasp their true potential, I still picked up those fancy cameras and started filming these silly little videos of the world around me. That's where my flair for filmmaking started from. I thought I could create cinema. I loved creating small films for the sake of catharsis, which is exactly why I continue to do this, to this day as well. The madness of it all, which still prevails to this day. Though I now understand the ways of the world a lot more than I did as a child, because when you grow up, the facade of the candy-colored fantasy kind of fades away and you're embraced by the shackles of pragmatism. But that blind rush of lunacy from art still prevails, despite everything that happens. The lunacy of chasing and creating art still persists. The rage to capture the sands and the seas, the cadmium blue of the infinite skies, the falcons and the beast, the birds and the oceans 9 fathoms deep. But sometimes I feel like a stranger trapped in a corpse, trying to cut through the flesh and seek my way out. Nothing has changed. I still look at art and run around with it and never understand the peculiar ways of everyone around me. Nothing has changed as I'm still an isolated kid trying to make sense of the world around me. Nothing has changed because people around me are still busy with their conversations and chit chat and never have time for art. Nothing has changed except maybe the spark behind the eyes of the 5-year-old. It's no longer there. The twinkle in the eye has died. Sometimes the spark returns, but not in the form of a twinkle, but in the form of a tear. Nothing has changed except wonder, which has now turned into frenzy. To be perceived has always been one of my greatest fears. My misfortune is that I lie trapped in the embrace of my fear, and I can't seem to fight my way out of it. I can't seem to break free from the ardent approach of scrutiny, and now I sit in a corner and watch myself being perceived. Feeling the weight of my existence, I take up space, and I sit perplexed and lost. Nothing has changed, as I have realized I'm still the same 5-year-old kid, naive, weak, confused, sometimes lost, sometimes found.